Hello, this is my informative speech on the Prophet, peace be upon him, Prophet of Islam. Now, everyone can see this font, right? You can read it fine?
We can.
Okay. So, for the introduction, the Prophet, ﷺ, peace be upon him, was a person who had amazing character. He he was always successful and drew in people with his amazing leadership, his influence, and he changed the course of history, and he still influences billions of people around the world. Now, first, we're going to talk about his character. What was he like? His life and his battles, the battles that he engaged in. Now, first, the Prophet's character. The Prophet, peace be upon him, exhibited exemplary character traits, including honesty, trustworthiness, and integrity. He was named Al-Amin, which means the honest, even before his prophethood. And everyone would trust him in his community, and he always solved disputes. For example, there was one time where a few Arabs, they were fighting over who would put the black stone, which is a sacred stone in their religion, in their culture, who would put it back on the Kaaba, which was a sacred monument. So they were arguing, and the conflict almost led to battle. But the Prophet, they said whoever came in next would be the one who would decide. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, walked in, and they all rejoiced because they knew he was trustworthy and he would show justice. And he solved the conflict peacefully. Now, he was kind and generous. Anytime he would see anyone who was needy or poor, he would always help them, even when he had nothing himself. He was fair and just. In a time when the rights of women, children, and slaves were almost nothing, he was the one who gave them their rights, and he would always stand up for them. He was always forgiving. Anyone who did wrongdoings to him, he would always forgive them. There was one time after he successfully conquered Mecca, after he was kicked out of his hometown of Mecca, and he came back after he conquered the city, and all of his opponents that were there, the people who would torture him and his companions, they would kill them and their families, he decided to forgive all of them and let them be free. Now, the Prophet, peace be upon him, his life. In his youth, in the beginning, in his birth, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was born in 570 CE, and his father had passed away before his birth. In the Arabs' culture, it is a custom to give the child away to a wet nurse in their first years. So he was given to a woman named Halima for 6 years. And then he came back to his mother, and then only 2 months later, his mother had passed away of an illness. So he was given to his grandfather to be with him. But sadly, after 2 years, his grandfather had also passed away. So he was given to his uncle Abu Talib, which he stayed with until his adulthood. Now, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he married at 25 to a woman called Khadija, and he had 4 children. When he was 40 years old, it was when he had his first revelation in a mountain called Jabal al-Nur, or the mountain of light, and in a cave. And he preached Islam for 3 years in private at first, and he built a following with people who he trusted before he announced it publicly. And when he announced it publicly, it gathered so much opposition and people who abused and killed him and his companions. It was so bad that he and his companions had to migrate to a city called Medina, where they fought many battles with the Quraysh, who were the tribe of Mecca who were abusing him and his companions. And they came back 20 years later, and they conquered Mecca. Now, the Prophet's battles. All the battles in between him and Quraysh. So there were 2 main battles, the most important ones. the Battle of Badr, which was the first battle. In this battle, the Muslims won. So basically, what was happening in the battle is that when they were migrating to Medina, they had to leave quickly. So they left almost all of their belongings. So the people there, the Quraysh, they decided to take all of them and go to Yemen, which was north, to sell everything. And while they were coming back, the Muslims decided to intercept them to get their things back. But the person who was in charge of the caravan had heard about this and he had rerouted to dodge them. But at the same time, the people from Mecca came to fight them. They had an army of 1,000 people with over 100 horses, which was very important in the desert. The Muslim army only had 300 people with only 2 horses. Plus, since they were coming to attack a caravan, not an actual army, they only had light armor or no armor at all, and short swords or daggers. And this was their first battle where they were allowed to fight back against the people who were abusing them, and they still won. Now, the second battle was the Battle of Uhud. In this battle, many people died. The battle was in a mountain, near a mountain called Mount Uhud, and they had 3,000 people from Quraysh with over 1,000 camels, 300 horses, and many archers. But in comparison, the Muslim army only had 700 with 50 archers. Now, in this battle, at first, the Muslims were pushing back against the Quraysh and they were winning. The Prophet, peace be upon him, had set archers on the back of the mountain to fight back any of the people who tried surrounding them, coming around the mountain to circle and surround them to attack them from both sides. He had placed archers there. But those archers, most of them, when they saw that the battle was they were winning and it was going in their favor, they decided to leave so they could finish up the battle and take the loot. But because of this, many of the leaders saw this opportunity, circle around the mountain and defeat them. And they were forced to go up a mountain into hiding, and it ended in a draw. So that was all. My resources came from sunnah.com, history.com, and arabnews.com. Thank you for listening to my presentation.